it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be making a card using the Mama Elephant Family Time stamp set and the Slim Card Basics dies to create my first ever Slimline card. So I'm going to start with my coloring. I've stamped my images out on some Neenah Solar White cardstock with Lawn Fawn's jet black ink, and I'm going to color with my Copic markers. I'm starting with the little bunny, and for her I'm going to use E000 and E00. I'm laying in the shadow first with that E00 around the sides of her face and down the back of her body, underneath her arm and at the base of her belly, and then I'm going to begin to blend that out with the E00. I want her to be nice and soft, so I'm going to leave a lot of area white, and then I will bring in my colorless blender to smooth the transition between those two areas. And then I'm going to move on to the little baby. I'm going to use the same combos for each of the mama and baby pairs. So I started again with that E00 and then just softening with the E000 and once again blending out the edge with the 0 marker. For the deer, I'm using E51, E53, and E55. And I'm going to lay in my shadows first with that E55. I'm going to put a deep shadow on the ear that's on the far side of her head and also accentuate her muzzle just a little bit by drawing in a little bit of darkness there. I'm also going to add some darkness to the leg that's on the far side of her body and put some shadow between the crease of her folded leg and add a little bit of detail to her kneecap. And then I'm going to get much heavier with my shadows on her rump, since that's where the baby is in front of and would be blocking the light. And then I'm going to begin to blend out with that E53. I'm going to go back and forth between the E55 and E53 to really darken up that far ear. And then I'll bring that E53 down on her face and just pull that mid-tone, towards the center of the shape of each of, the areas of her body. Just softening up the edge of that E53 and saving the majority of the highlighted area for the center of her face and the front of her body. And I'm also going to leave a little bit of white space on her tail. Then I'll bring in the E51 and try to smooth that transition. I am going to have to go back a little bit to smooth that even further because I wasn't happy with the blend. So I'll just go back to that E53 and feather in a little bit of color in those trouble spots and then blend out the edge of that with that E51 once again. And I was much, much happier with that. I did grab my colorless blender once again because I wanted to soften up the area right on the front of her muzzle just a bit. So I pushed back a little bit of that brown, and then I'm going to add in the E50 to do the white areas. So the white spot that's on her chest, and also a little bit to the bottom of her ear. I just used a tiny bit of the E51 first and then softened with the E50 into the white. And then for the baby, I'm going to use the same shades. So I'm starting once again with the E55 and doing the shadow down the back of her head. And I did not put any shadow on the top of her rump because I wanted there to be a difference between the mother and baby there. So I'm going to keep that nice and light. And also there would be more chance of the light hitting her in that area since she's in front. So I'm just softening with all of those shades. And then I'm also going to use a little bit of the E50. So she's just a little bit of a lighter tone. I also used a little bit of E50 on the insides of the deer and bunny's ears. And now moving on to my koala, I'm going to use W00, W1, W3, and W5. I'm putting a shadow with that W5 on the top of her head, right under the baby, and then also down the sides of her face. And then I'm also going to put a little bit under her head on her neck area and down the back of her body, and then a little bit on her legs and the undersides of her arms. And then I'll use the W3 to begin to soften that up. Just kind of scrubbing in little circles over the edge of the W5 to kind of break up that pigment and get a really nice and smooth blend. I think these illustrations from Ada Zamora are just so adorably cute, and I was so excited to get to play with them today. So I'm finishing up my blending with the W3, and I also am going to add a little shadow where her leg would be casting one on her belly and also her far arm there. And then I'm going to move on to my W1, and I'm doing the same exact little circular scribbling motion to just break up that pigment of the W3 and soften it and then fill in the rest of her face. I'm going to also fill in her arms and legs with that W1, and I'm just saving a little bit of area for the W00 on her belly, and I also did the kind of tips of her ears. And then I did go back and do a second layer on her. I felt like the contrast had gotten lost with those lighter shades, so it was just real quick and simple to go back and add it in. I didn't do it everywhere. I skipped the bottom of her arms and the insides of her ears. Just put it where I thought it was most lacking. You guys know how much I love my contrast. And then I just went back and blended out with the W3 and then the W1 once again. And that also creates a little bit more contrast from her body to her belly as well. For the baby, I'm going to skip the W5 and go straight to the W3 for my darkest. And then I'm going to blend that out with the W1 and finish with the W00 in the center of her face. And then I will bring in the W7, and I'm going to use the W7 and W5 to color in both of their noses. So I just put a little W7 toward the top half and then blended it down to the bottom with the W5. I'll bring in RV10 and RV11 to color the insides of all the critters' ears. I just flicked a little bit of the RV11 in first, and then I'm going to blend that out with the RV10, just using that same flicking motion there to get it nice and soft. And then I'm also going to use those shades to do the rosy cheeks. I'm starting with the RV10 because I wasn't sure how dark I wanted to go, especially on the bunnies since they're super light. And I'm doing kind of a different shape today. Instead of a circular rosy cheek, I'm kind of doing a little bit of an oval right underneath their eyes there, or right up on their cheekbones. On the darker critters, the RV10 wasn't quite enough, so I did go in with the RV11 just to brighten that up just a bit. And then I trimmed these images out with the matching dies. I want my final card to measure 3.5 by 8.5 inches. So I'm taking my 8.5 by 11 piece of Lawn Fawn Ballet Slippers cardstock, and I'm turning that horizontally in my paper trimmer and trimming that down at the 7-inch mark. Then I will use my scoreboard to score my paper at the 3.5-inch mark. And my paper was so long that I did have to turn it and score again to get the entire spine done. And I just used my Teflon bone folder to reinforce the spine as well. Then I'm going to take the scalloped die from that Slim Card Basics set that I showed at the beginning and trim that out of white cardstock. And then I'll take the straight stitched die and trim that out of a piece of Lovely Moments cardstock by Pebbles. And these papers that are 6 by 8 are perfect to be able to get 2 pieces from this one die. I'm only going to be using one of them today, but just so you know. I'm also going to take a piece of pattern paper and use the cloudy border die that comes in that same set and use that to create some bushes in the background. So to make sure that my paper is nice and strong, I'm going to adhere that to a piece of white cardstock the same exact size, and then I will run that together through my die cutting machine. I'm going to tape it in place with a little bit of Post-it tape to make sure that it doesn't shift since it is exactly the right size. And then I'm going to add the little circular cutouts that have kind of a really nice organic shape to them, and I'm going to tape those in place as well. Each of them have a slightly different shape and size, so I just made sure that the tallest one was in the center, as I thought that would look better. I will say that running these through my die cutting machine was a little bit tricky because I have a Cuttlebug and the plates are not long enough for these Slimline dies. Also, you can't get the plates for the Cuttlebug anymore, so I am in the market for a new die cutting machine, and I would love to hear your suggestions. So for the sentiment, I've taken another piece of that Ballet Slippers cardstock from Lawn Fawn and put that in my MISTI. I'm going to prep it with my EK Success powder tool and then stamp a sentiment from Everyday Greetings from Mama Elephant with Versamark ink. It's just a clear sticky ink that works great for embossing, and I did stamp that down 2 times to get a good impression. And then I'm going to take some Ranger Superfine Gold embossing powder and coat the entire surface of that, tap off the excess from the back, and then I will bring my heat tool to that and heat up that powder from the back side first, just to kind of eliminate any warping until it's all nice and shiny. My card base was too long to fit in the MISTI the usual way, so I did have to just turn that a bit, and I put it with the spine facing the outside edge, and that way I could fit it just perfectly. And I'm stamping down the extra image that I didn't use on the outside, plus another greeting from that Everyday Greetings stamp set with Lawn Fawn's bubblegum ink. Then I can start building my card. I'm going to adhere the white scalloped panel first, and because I did have to turn this in my die cut machine and run it through, from the other side the second half, some of the scallops aren't perfect, but I decided not to worry about it because I thought maybe it kind of went with the wonky circles, so I just decided to go with it. I also did use the grass hillside die that came in that same die set to cut down a piece of Lawn Fawn cilantro cardstock, and then I added some foam tape to the back of the main focal panel. So I'm going to peel off those release papers and just get that nice and centered, and then use that foam tape to press down and pick up that background panel. Then I'll add some liquid glue to the back of that and center it on my card front, and then press that down into place. I've added foam tape to the back of all of my images, and I'm going to start with the mother and baby deer. I wanted them to be in the center circle since they're kind of the tallest, I believe. So I'm going to just get them situated right where I want them, and then I'm going to put the bunnies over on the far right and the koalas on the left. I've die cut the sentiment with one of the speech bubbles that came with the set, and I'm going to adhere that, kind of overlapping the center circle going over toward the right. I added just a little piece of foam tape to bridge that little gap, and then just use regular glue where it would be on top of the popped up surface of the frame. As a final embellishment, I'm going to take some of the Sparkling Clear Mix sequins from Pretty Pink Posh, and I'm going to add those to my card front. So I'm just taking a little bit of the Ranger Multimedia Matte and dabbing it where I want those sequins to go. And then I'm going to use my jewel picker to pick those up and press them into place right over top of the glue. And I'm making sure to do kind of like some different sizes in each of the little spots. The only exception will be on the little speech bubble sentiment. I'm going to use 2 of the small ones just because that's what fit best in that area. So I'll just add 2 more little dabs of glue. This glue is getting a little bit hard to come out of the container. I probably need to pick up a new one, but it still is my favorite glue for these type of embellishments. It works really good keeping those sequins in place as they go through the mail, and I have tested that out with some friends. I'm also going to take a little bit of Stardust Stickles and fill in the centers of those sequins with just a little dot of that glitter glue, and that is going to finish up my card for today. Just making sure to use that jewel picker to kind of push everything back down into place because it wanted to pull up because the glue wasn't quite dry. And I had to add just a tiny bit extra underneath that one right over on the left to make sure that it was, secured into place. So thank you guys so much for watching my first ever Slimline card. I hope you guys enjoyed. I have to say I was very impressed with this die set from Mama Elephant. It really included everything that I needed to create a Slimline card. So if you're a fan of Slimline cards, or if you enjoyed this video, please go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe and ring that notification bell so you don't miss any future videos. I'm working hard to bring you new content every Monday and Friday. And if you can't wait that long, here's 2 extra videos I thought you might also enjoy. You can click on either one of those to check them out. I hope you all have an absolutely amazing day. Bye-bye.